How's it going, everyone? Justin here with Mymanjustins Collectible Emporium, and I'm your man for Pokemon cards, card analysis, and Pokemon investment consulting. Today, I'm going to do a video. I'm going to do some deep, detailed analysis on the cost sold of various Charizard Pokemon cards with different grading systems, and I go through BGS, PSA, and CGC. Although with CGC, since it's a little newer, there was a lot less data to find sale prices for these cards, but I did find some of it, but there was a decent amount of BGS and PSA sales, of course. So I'm going to go through those cards and I'm going to explain the average price sold. I'm going to talk about the percent increase in difference between the PSA 9s and 10s from the BGS 9.5s and 10s, and the differences between the PSA 9s and BGS 9.5s and PSA 10s, BGS 10s, and so forth like that. So you can see what kind of premiums you'll actually get by using these different grading systems, and better be able to choose what kind of grading systems that you will want to use when you send your cards to get graded. So the first card I looked at was the first edition holo Dark Charizard from the Team Rocket set. And this card, on average, the BGS 9 sold for about $800. The 9.5 sold for about $1,775. And so the percent increase from a 9 to a 9.5 was about a 55% increase. So that's a pretty big increase and a pretty slight difference. And that's one of the things that's nice about BGS actually, is that they do the subgrading so you can get the 9 and the 9.5. Although I would say that the BGS 9.5 costs are pretty comparable to the PSA 9, which kind of negates the advantage because if you end up getting the 9, you're going to get a little bit less. So it really, a lot of this is going to go back to properly appraising your cards and being good at evaluating the grade. And I did a video on evaluating your cards to better be able to determine what grade you're going to get before you send it in, so you can have a better idea of your investment. And that's definitely really going to be important, especially when you want to choose which grading system that you want to use. So next we go to the PSA 9 sold for the Dark Charizard first edition holo. The PSA 9s sold for about $780 on average, and the PSA 10s sold for about $24.37 on average. Now, there was no BGS 10s of this card sold within the last year, so I wasn't able to analyze how much a BGS 10 versus a PSA 10 would sell for. So we're just going to have to use the data that I was available with the eBay tool for my store. But so from the PSA 9 to the 10, you're going to get about a 68% increase on price from a PSA 9 to a PSA 10. So again, really big increase. And we'll also compare the different increases from 9s to 10s on other cards as well, to see what kind of differences there are between the different cards, because I go over other Charizard cards: Blaine's Charizard, the Shiny Charizard from Hidden Fates, the Crystal Charizard. And okay, so the increase from a BGS 9.5 to a PSA 10 is about a 28%. So you're going to get about 28% more for the Dark Charizard holo first edition from a PSA 10 versus a BGS 9.5. So that's a pretty significant amount, but like I said, I didn't have the data to look at a BGS 10. There wasn't any of those in the database. Now, for this card though, the BGS 9 and the PSA 9 are roughly the same, with the BGS 9 being $800 and the PSA 9 average being $780. But the 9.5 is $1,775. And again, this is the advantage with BGS, because there's no subgrade like that for PSA as far as I've ever seen. And if it's a PSA 9, if it gets grade PSA 9, but it would have been a PSA 9.5 in BGS, you would have got quite a bit more for that BGS 9.5. The BGS 9.5 is $1,775. So there's almost a 50% increase on price between the 9.5 BGS and the 9 PSA. You're going to get about 50% more for the 9.5. So that's where you're gonna have to be really accurate in your appraisal. And if you really think that it's gonna get a 9.5 in BGS, although you really see this is where you have nothing to lose, because if it's a BGS 9 and it would have been a PSA 9, you're just going to get the same. But if it is a little better and it would have been a 9.5 with BGS, you're just going to get the 9 with PSA, and you could have got 50% price premium on the 9.5 with BGS. So that's one of those things with BGS, you know, they do have a bit of an edge on PSA with that subgrade system, getting the 0.5 grades, and going through PSA, you could lose a 50% price premium when if it could have got the 9.5 with BGS. So you kind of have nothing to lose with BGS in the case of the Dark Charizard. And I personally have been using PSA for the last 4 years, and seeing this data, it makes me reconsider what I would do in the future. Now with CGC, for the same card, the first edition Holo Dark Charizard, there was one CGC 9 in the last year. It sold for $600. So versus the PSA 9 780 and the BGS 9 at $800, there definitely seems to be a premium for the BGS and PSA versus CGC. You know, it's still new, but if you want to put your cards through them, it does seem that there's a fair, about a 20% premium you're going to miss out on if you use CGC. But of course, this could change in the future if more people start using CGC and they get more respected and known. That differentiation could change a bit and be a bit more even. But as of right now, you're going to get less for the same grade. Next card I looked at was the Shiny Charizard from Hidden Fates. And the PSA 10 average sale price was about $14.97, almost $1,500 for the PSA 10 grade of the card. The average PSA 9 was about $708. So the percent increase from the 9 to the 10, you're gonna get about a 53% increase on price from the 9 to the 10. And that's about what we saw with the other card as well, with the first edition Dark Charizard, about a 50% price increase. Now the average BGS 9.5 sold for $876, and the average BGS 10 sold for $1,400. So in this case, the percent increase from the 9.5 to the 10, just in the BGSs, you're going to get about a 38% increase in price. But it's only a half grade difference. So from the 9 to the 10, it's probably going to be about the same, about a 50% increase in price. So the prices are pretty comparable on these newer cards with this Shiny Charizard. The BGS 10 and the PSA 10 are roughly the same, although the black labels, if the card is a black label, meaning it's got 10 on all the subgrades, surface, corners, centering, all that, the two black labels sold in April, the 11th and the 31st. One sold for $5,100, the other one sold for $6,500. So there is a huge premium for the black label. And the black label, of course, is going to be extremely hard to get. But see, that's the thing, is that if you had a card that would have been a black label pristine 10 with BGS, you're only going to get a PSA 10, and you're going to get your average of $1,500. If you send it into BGS and you get the black label, you got yourself a $5,000 or $6,000 card. Something to consider. And that's, again, I think the main strength with BGS is these subgrades and that possibility for the black label pristine. Obviously, it's incredibly rare, but if you have a card that you really think has that kind of perfection in it, you got nothing to lose by sending to BGS, especially because the prices for PSA 10 and BGS 10, if it's not a black label 10, are about the same anyway. So you really only have a lot to gain with BGS. So the CGC, there was one sold in the last year. It got a 9.5 and it sold for $660. So again, you are going to lose quite a bit of a premium. The PSA 9 selling for $708 average, and the BGS 9.5 selling for $870. The 9.5 CGC only going for $660. You're losing, 10-15% premium. So you're going to get a premium on the BGS and PSA by 10 to 15% or so. The next card I looked at was the base set Charizard, the Unlimited, not the Shadowless, not the first edition. Just wanted to keep it simple, and I compared across the board with all the grades with all the others as well. The PSA 9 version of this card averaged at 728. The average PSA 10 averaged at 2,392. And I will say with these averages, the market has been so dynamic in the last year, and there's been such dramatic price increases. It's hard to really capture an average price, but this is just from sales in September, May, July. So, and of course there was an increase since back then, but this is the best kind of approximation of I took averages over time. So like I said, the average PSA 9, 728, average PSA 10, 2392. The percent increase from a 9 to a 10 PSA on this card was about a 70% increase. So there's more of a premium, which might be due to the fact that there's just a lower population of PSA 10 cards in this version, or that it's just a more popular card and more people want to have the 10, so they're willing to pay that kind of premium for the 10. So with this card, 70% increase from the PSA 9 to 10. The average BGS 9.5 sold for $1,900. There wasn't any BGS 10s in the database on this card, so I couldn't compare that. But the percent increase from PSA 9 to BGS 9.5, you're going to get about 62% more for the BGS 9.5. So again, this is a situation that if you send it to PSA and it got a 9 and it could have got a 9.5 from BGS, you're missing out on a 62% premium, which is quite a bit of money when the card is selling for $1,900. The percent increase from BGS 9.5 to PSA 10, you're going to get 21% more for the PSA 10 versus the 9.5. So, and unfortunately, like I said, I couldn't compare the BGS 10 to the PSA 10 because there wasn't any in the database, but you are going to get 21% more for a PSA 10 versus a BGS 9. So that's a situation where it would be better to send to PSA with the 10, and if it would have got a 9.5 with BGS. Now, there were a few CGCs sold in the last year, but there wasn't anything above an 8.5 grade. What I noticed with the CGCs is that it seems like people maybe are just trying this grading company out and sending lower grade cards into it, because the only cards that were graded that I was able to see was a 7.5, an 8.5, another 8.5, and another 7.5. And those two 8.5s averaged at about $600 for the sale price, and the 7.5s averaged about $400 on the sale price. So again, it's hard to compare with the CGC price because it's different grade levels. But I would assume you probably get a bit more for a PSA 7 or a PSA 8 versus the CGC. The next card I looked at was the Crystal Charizard from Skyridge. And I looked at the reverse holo, not the regular holo. Although I just wanted to point out that the PSA 9 regular holo sold for $4,500. The PSA 9s averaged about $1,155. So, and the average PSA 10 sold for $2,100. So this one had a little bit less of an increase from PSA 9 to PSA 10. There was only about a 45% premium on the PSA 10. And I actually think that is because the PSA 10 reverse holos of this card may be a little undervalued. It's just kind of a really niche, expensive card. I think people might even think it's just too expensive to deal with, and there's not as big of a market able to even compete with it to bring the price up. But that could change in the future, but I think this is a card to look out for. The average BGS 9.5 is about the same as the PSA 10, about $2,000. There wasn't any BGS 10s with this card, unfortunately, again. But like I said, the BGS 9.5 sells for about the same price as the PSA 10. So the next card I looked at was the Blaine's Charizard, and I looked at only the unlimited version of it. And just a note, just for a side note, the first edition PSA 10 recently sold for $4,350, but that's the first edition. So back to the unlimited holo. PSA 9s sold for an average of $563. The average PSA 10 sold for an average of $1,991. That is about a 72% increase from the PSA 9 to the PSA 10, which is a very, very big premium on this card. Again, it's probably due to the fact there's a lower population of 10s, and it's a pretty popular card, and people want the 10, and they're paying quite a bit of a premium from the 9. The BGS 9.5 is $529. So again, we see the BGS 9.5 is about the same as a PSA 9. So and that's something to note. PSA 9s are a pretty strong card. It's considered mint. The BGS 9.5 is considered gem mint, but pretty much that's what PSA 9s really are. The PSA just has a really higher standard for when they call something gem mint. It's almost like saying it's pristine. So that's why there's a much bigger premium, or there's a really big premium on the PSA 10 when they're really hard to get. The CGCs, again, there was only a CGC 5 that sold in the last year of this card, and it sold for $75, and that was in September, so it was actually recently. And again, that's another thing I saw with these CGC cards. There's a lot of lower grade. It seems like people aren't wanting to send their higher grade cards to them. Maybe they're just trying them out with these kind of lower grades to get a feel for them before they start sending in the higher grades, because there is, as we can see, there's a premium for the PSA and BGS grading systems. So PSA 10 about 75. The PSA 10 is about 75% more than the BGS 9.5. So again, we couldn't compare the BGS 10 for this card because there wasn't any, but the PSA 10 is about 75% more than the half grade below with BGS at 9.5. But again, that really speaks to the fact, like we've seen with all these situations, is that a 9.5 is generally seen, at least by consumers, to be comparable to a PSA 9. BGS 9.5 equal to PSA 9. So that's something to keep in mind. Just because it says gem mint doesn't mean it's equal to a PSA 10 gem mint. A PSA 10 gem mint has a higher standard than a BGS 9.5 gem mint. Although, if you can get the BGS 10 pristine, you are getting a potential premium on that card. So again, as far as sending in cards, it really just comes down to what kind of grade you think that you are realistically going to get. And like on some of these cards we've seen where, like on the Rockets Charizard, where it might be advantageous if you could have sent it in to BGS and got a 9.5 and would have got a PSA 9, you actually got quite a bit of a premium, like 50% premium, if you would have just sent it into BGS to get the 9.5 rather than the PSA 9. So that's one thing, like I said, with BGS, it's hard to, I don't know why PSA doesn't do the subgrades like that, because it just makes it so sending to BGS, you almost have nothing to lose, because in most of the cases, at the very least, you'll either get the same or potentially a little more. So, and this is good for me to know too. Like I said, I've been staying with PSA for a long time. I've had pretty good dealings with them, but I'm gonna start rethinking about BGS, because, like I said, in some of these cases, you got nothing to lose but to gain. So yeah, I just wanted to share that analysis with you for your own investing and collecting practices. Give you some ideas of the cost of some of these popular Charizard cards, what kind of premiums you can get, and what kind of costs you can expect them to be out there in the market right now. So hope you appreciated that. I will be making another video, maybe even today, because I have some market analysis I wanted to share with y'all, and I'll get into that on the next episode. But until then, I will see you on the next broadcast, and thank you for tuning in.